Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to get started with the webinar, Data on the Edge, Best Practices for Mobile Data Protection. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Kathy. I'm Kathy Ward. I'm a Product Marketing Manager with VaultLogix. And our agenda for today's presentation is, of course, mobile data protection best practices. And we'll be looking at what mobile data is, what are mobile devices, what new challenges that's brought with the industry shift towards mobile data and distributed data, supporting that with some statistics, and then obviously the core of the presentation being best practices with a particular focus on data security and then remote management. With so many mobile endpoints, with a more mobile workforce than ever, we need to make sure we can protect all of them. So what those best practices are, and then with those end users, what sort of experience they're having while using that solution. We'll also take a look at the competitive landscape for what other offers are out there, and then tell you a little about us. So I'm going to introduce our presenter now. His name is John McGuire. He's our Director of Sales at VaultLogix. He's an industry expert on online backup, been in the industry for almost 10 years now, and so he's going to be walking you through the agenda I just reviewed.
Great. Thanks, Kathy, and thanks, everyone, for joining us today. The first thing I wanted to do before we jumped into the webinar was actually come up with a poll question, and I think it might be helpful to ask some simple questions of understanding what we're looking to do here. Talking about mobile data and data protection. I guess the first thing is just really trying to understand is do you currently back up your company's laptops, knowing that it is kind of a concern and a growing need that's here. So looks like we're moving forward here in the polls. Like a lot of people are coming up with primarily yes, which is good. So I think this will also I think be helpful when talking about getting involved into some of the things we're talking about for best practices. Is not just necessarily backup, but data protection that's wrapped around multiple different things. So good. Why don't we continue on? Oops, excuse me. So first we want to describe what is mobile data. So the definition that we have here is business critical information being generated and stored on devices that are outside of the company's infrastructure. The one thing that can be a misnomer is calling it mobile data. It doesn't necessarily have to be a laptop. A desktop could be considered, in this case, mobile because it's outside of the company's infrastructure that's there. And secondly, mobile devices. A mobile workforce generates massive amounts of data, often many miles away from the corporate headquarters. They hold and create more data because unlike being in a corporate office, they have access to servers and applications and storage. Everything's got to be held on that machine. So the driving factor of a lot of mobile devices is increasing. It can be seen, especially seeing how large the hard drives have gotten over the years of handling mobile data. So we wanted to come up with a quick kind of description of what that is so everyone's on the same playing field when we're specifically talking about mobile devices and mobile data. So as Kathy mentioned, we wanted to kind of come in and first talk about what are some of the challenges that are there with regards to mobile data. Of course, these unprotected endpoints or devices are kind of a new threat. It's nice that a lot of people are backing them up, but there's a lot more to that. And some of the challenges that are there are really looking at it from a distance standpoint. Of course, this could be remote offices, branch offices, that single user, be it a laptop user that's traveling, or be it a SOHO user that has a desktop at home. Part of the problem is distance. Having resources or availability to get to those people via the internet, could be time zones, could be a lot of different factors that come into play from a distance standpoint. And then also lack of IT control. There's a new buzz out that's going around is BYOD or bring your own device, and talking about that is because nowadays everyone has their own devices. Using those in a work-related atmosphere also gives the IT department less control of those because they don't actually own or have access or rights to those machines as well. And then lastly, of course, there's increased risk of human error. As it says here, it could be accidental, but it could be deliberate breach. I've had a story from years ago being in this field, as Kathy mentioned. I've been around for, selling IT and storage for well over 15 years. And I remember being in a previous company, and someone that was working remotely had been dismissed, and they sent their laptop back, but everything was gone off of the laptop. So looking at that, the deliberate breach of them making sure that all the work they did and everything they'd created has simply been gone. So it does happen, and again, could be accidental of someone mistakenly deleting something, or of course it could be deliberate. So when looking at some of the challenges of the mobile data, first and foremost, devices, of course, can be lost or stolen. Because they're mobile, because you have a laptop, they're traveling outside of the company. There's an increase of the chance of being stolen. You can see some of the stats that are here about percentages of, 10% of laptops have a chance of being stolen over the next 3 years, and only 5% of laptops that are stolen are recovered. Goes into the idea that this is a commonality, and because they're sitting in cars or in bags or things that are available, it does make for that. Secondly, devices just aren't protected. This is, the nice thing about our poll we talked about is it looks like the majority of people are backing up their laptops, but there was still a good 30% of people who saying they weren't backing up their laptops. And to go back to the fact of talking about BYOD or bring your own device, people adding more or looking to back up devices that are their own does add that added pressure to handle for mobile users. And then lastly, data loss. Well, it's expensive. I think it's not only are there specific costs of what does it mean with the data that is gone, because those can get pretty expensive depending on what the information is. But I think there's also some, call it a soft cost loss, I guess you'd say, and talk about, reputation management or brand loss, that comes into play of finding out that someone's data has been breached or stolen or lost or accessed. And then on top of that, add on the fines that go in case those things come up for court fees or any kind of regulations that come into there. It can get very expensive. There's an interesting blog we posted a few months ago that talked about NASA had lost a laptop. So their way to combat that was that no longer laptops can leave the actual building, which is like kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face. In regards to, that's what they're there for. They're there for us to be able to bring home to work, to run around, to do things, and their only defense to that was to just, not let it leave the building. So while we're moving into the next phase here, I have a second poll that I wanted to talk about. So knowing, kind of now going through some of the ideas of what are some of the challenges of mobile data, I wanted to ask the question is what's the biggest what's the biggest mobile data protection challenge? So as you see here, it's really trying to give us an understanding of, from the audience of here is what are, because it's different for everybody. It could be something to do with security. It could be something to do with, BYOD, like I mentioned. So it's interesting. It looks like there's a lot of different areas of the issues that are people to. All right, good. So, some of the main things here is just, looks like stolen, remotely managing are some of the hot items here. And then, of course, people that just aren't backing them up. So this is good. This is good information to know. So as we're moving on, we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the mobile data statistics that are here. We could probably list some of these out. Of course, number one, seeing here that the IDC estimates that at least 60% of important company data is stored on laptops or desktops. And, you can kind of understand the way we're moving into this new, the new age is, people are working later, they're working longer. the requirements for using laptops and things of that nature is getting stressed. So you can imagine, my own problem myself is I keep everything on my laptop. So that is why this has been increasing. But of course, every week over 12,000 laptops are stolen in airports. The FBI Computer Crime Survey says that it costs about $67.2 billion annually. I did think this was an interesting statistic. This was done by a survey, I guess, was done in 2011 from security IT decision makers. But it says 22% of companies had staff who kept company data on their phones, which is interesting. But 94% of its IT leaders had concerns about the mix of personal and corporate data used by employees on their own mobile devices. And again, that's getting into that realm of bringing your own device and using your own personal devices for work, where there can be that we can cross those lines as well. Of course, it says here 57% of highlighted worries about legal issues that could stem from BYOD. And then lastly, 67% expressed, these IT decision makers expressed concerns about the retention security of the data on mobile devices. More importantly, talking about how long would they have the ability to go back to restore from as well. So let's get into some of the main, the best practices of talking about data security. Going through here is, of course, locked it up is really key in positioning of looking into where are you going to keep your data. And looking at this, there are plenty of companies out there, from records management companies that are housing documents and data and tapes to data centers that are using online backup, using replication or anything else. But a very important key piece of this is to make sure that when you're entrusting this with people is that the facility or the company is a SOC 2 or SAS 70 compliant. Making sure that they're meeting all the regulations and questions, and also they're adhering to those as well on an ongoing basis. Number two is keeping your data safe. I've been looking in this market for years now. The number one concern continually is always wrapped around security, and making sure that, of course, data encryption and encryption policies, and making sure to understand encryption keys is an important factor. Again, whether it being an online backup, whether it be to tape or anything else you're doing, is making sure that you have the correct security measures in place. And then also wipe it clean. So when we start looking at talking about security of data, but the other part of it is okay, what if the data is stolen or is lost? Is how do we make sure that no one else has access to that data? And having the ability to, as you say, delete or remove the data is extremely important. When looking at these things, there's these abilities to do shredding of sensitive information, basically having the ability to overwrite the data multiple times to make sure that even from a forensic standpoint it can't be accessed, because a lot of companies, when doing just a simple delete, they call it a shallow delete, sometimes doesn't adhere or match up to what needs to happen. So as we're moving into talking a little bit about mobile data and making sure that, handling it from the distance and lack of control, but also understanding that the end user experience is pretty important. And the end user is the person that's on the other end of that mobile device. So of course, some of the key requirements are, it's nice to have one application that can cover both the security and the backup needs. Meaning there's an application that can not only do your backups, have those automated, but also have that ability to do that remote deletion or shredding of your data. No user intervention needed for installs and registrations. Looking at it from a mobile force, you might have hundreds of users that are out there. Well, to do 100 installs, to log into each device, coordinate the time to do that, is almost impossible, let alone time-consuming. But having the ability to do this, call it a simple, easy-to-set-up install, and then secondly, the third point there talks about the download, is having a small footprint from a download perspective to be able to support that application is highly important. Having a self-managed or centrally managed profiles. This is great to have the ability where there could be a single person to manage all these, but also giving the end user that ability to manage their own profile if needed. There are other people out there that call them the super users who do want to have access to everything, and then you have the people that you want to lock them down from accessing any information that they can, or the application any way they can. Easy to understand restore process. Basically, that's based off of the last bullet. That's a simple-to-use user interface. I've had people tell me that barely know how to turn on their computer. That's how intuitive the actual interface was to be able to set up backups, to do restores, and handle that as well. So in moving over from the end user experience, we need to also look at it from an administrative experience as well. So when you're looking at the IT guy that is involved, and his job is to make sure that all his end users are set up correctly, are performing well, you need to make sure that that experience is tried and true. Of course, there's a central silent install and registration process. What this does is actually gives you the ability to actually email the client out and do a silent install. So it's basically just a next with regards to the end user to be able to set up and install the software. There's actually a central managed console for all accounts, giving you the ability to actually manage all your policies, procedures, controls, change backup jobs, change backup times, add new applications, remotely delete it from this console. But a lot of functionality that's done from a simple administrative experience to handle all those users that are out there. Active Directory integration, which I think is very important, making sure that the same rules and roles are in place, whether it be through a backup product to mobile devices, and also managing them from a central console as well. And of course, the remote data deletion, giving you the ability that being an IT administrator is, if someone does lose their laptop, giving the ability to actually do a remote data deletion that's done from the central console. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of our product as we kind of lean into a little bit more of a VaultLogix product demonstration. But really keying in on some of these features is you look at there's the backups and restore section there. There's the easy on IT, how do we manage things, and then of course of handling it from an endpoint lockdown. And we picked basically the main people that really are fitting into this market. I call it the PC laptop market. They're not really up in managing a lot on the server side, but they do a pretty good job of handling laptops and desktops and like. But as you look down the left-hand side, you can see how VaultLogix meets a lot of the key issues that are there, and also it depends on what your needs are. Some people might feel that continuous data protection is not that important. But the main idea is, making sure that, the encryption keys and things are in place. Any kind of, centralized, policy management, that centralized console to help manage all these things is important. Or really, it might be the ability to do that complete lockdown or data deletion. But the nice thing about it is that looking at all the competitors that are out there, we seem to meet every single criteria that's available. So to go over a quick overview of our MobilePlus product, that's what we call it. Number one, we talk about backup and recovery. The nice thing about the solution is really giving, knowing that the end user doesn't have the internet connection or the bandwidth that might be at the corporate office. But what we do is try to make sure that we can help with that. And how that works is, of course, using deduplication and block-level backups, meaning that once we've backed up the data, we're only taking the data that's changed on a block level, and we're not sending the data back up site. So the key to that is making sure that we're not bogging down someone's internet, or the backups don't take a long time, and or restores. But we also use compression, your basic compression, everyone's familiar with, to make sure that the data is smaller when it gets put up. And then also we do bandwidth throttling. This gives us the ability to either turn up or turn down the bandwidth to make sure that the backups finish in a successful time, or if they're backing up during business hours, we're only utilizing a small amount of the bandwidth to not disturb the user. Of course, data security, again, this is one of the key components that most people have concerns with. I think it's the number one, moving forward is always making sure that my data is secure, and that some of the things we wrap around there, of course, is encryption. We use AES 256-bit encryption, your typical banking encryption that's used if anyone does any online banking. We also have remote data deletion, giving you the ability to, giving the administrator the ability to remotely delete data of anything that's been stolen or lost. And then, of course, the addition to SOC 2 or SAS 70 compliant data center, as well as the company, is to make sure that to make you feel comfortable with regards from a security standpoint. Lastly, the remote management, I think we touched base on, giving you the ability, or the administrator the ability to do remotely administer policies and procedures, and of course giving you the ability to do easy deployment and remote policy implementations. So as I screamed through the presentation, I wanted to touch a little bit on a little bit about VaultLogix. For those of you that have been on the presentations before know about us, or maybe customers currently today. But VaultLogix is a full-service online backup company. This is all we do. We do own our own proprietary backup technology. We do have developers on staff here to help develop those products. We've been in business since 2002. I think the importance of that is when you're looking at an online backup or a data backup company, part of it is that digital insurance, and insurance is all really based on feeling comfortable and secure at the company, but seeing that we've been in business since 2002, we're kind of old in this arena. We do have multiple data centers located all over the country, as well as a data center in Canada to help with some of the international customers that we have that don't want to send their data to the United States. We are the exclusive online backup provider for Ingram Micro. For those of you who don't know who Ingram Micro is, but they are the largest distributor of hardware and software in the world. Lastly, we have 8,000 business clients worldwide. That's in all 50 states as well as 25 plus countries. We do have an extensive reseller program. We have over 600 resellers. And of course, the company is SAS 70 Type 2 and SOC 2 audited. So here, I'll leave the screen up for now. This is talking about if you want any more information, please, you can go to our website, dataprotection.com. Of course, you can contact sales, and that is sales@VaultLogix.com, or as well as call the number 978-777-7177, option 1. But I'd like to open up to some questions.
Hey, John, we've got a few questions coming in, so I'll just field them and read them aloud to you if that's fine.
Okay.
The first one is, what is the difference between deleting data and shredding it? I think shredding may have been one of the terms used in the slides, if we can just clarify that.
Yeah, so the difference between a delete, what we call is just a basic shallow delete. It's really just a simple, how we all know of it, is just deleting the data. The actual shredding is actually having the software overwrites the data 7 times with randomly generated characters. So basically, even a forensic software analysis could not unscramble the characters. So what it does is it really does make it a strong delete when it comes to that. Okay, thank you. There's another one here. Can I lock down my users so they can't edit or change their backups? I suppose if you were the IT admin and you were pushing out your backups, can you lock someone down, the end user, so they can't alter them? Yeah, so the nice thing about it is we talked about the centrally managed console. It does give you that ability to give people either all access or a little access at all. I use it in terms of my company here, my CEO, who is he wants access to everything. So he has pretty much administrative access to, when using this product, which goes into an example of he was actually, perfect scenario. Had his laptop in his car, stopped off at his son's baseball game, left the car door unlocked. Someone came in, stole his bag, and the bag was his laptop. The nice thing about it was because we were doing the backup and we were have that ability to do remote deletion, we were able to handle it twice, right? We were able to download the data, his data, which is extremely important being the CEO, but also gave us the ability to do a remote deletion so that anyone who did have the computer was able to, didn't have access to the data as well.
Great. All right, I think we have a few more coming in. John, do you see anyone that you want to field at the moment?
I can't really see the questions that well.
Okay, I'm going to
user error?
generalize a few then. There's a couple coming in, so I'll just generalize it for you. One is asking if you have data that needs to stay within the U.S., basically, how do you handle that? I think we mentioned we had a data center in Canada. Is it possible to keep your data just in the U.S.?
It is. You know, we basically set them up wherever the request comes in. And to be honest, the bulk of our customers are based here in the United States. As mentioned, we do have the Canadian data center. Where that comes into play is people requesting to not have their data in the United States. So unless you specifically request to be put in Canada, you're going to stay in the United States.
Great. Okay, I think that's all we have time for today, but for all the additional questions, we can have someone reach out and get you the answers for them.
Okay. Well, thanks, everyone, for showing up, and Kathy, thanks for putting this together.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
The organizer has